Hola a todos y bienvenidos a esta entrevista especial aquí en Navarra, Olite. Soy Marc Philip y me acompaña mi socio Álvaro.
Hola a todos, soy Álvaro y estamos muy emocionados de tener con nosotros a Annabelle, enóloga y viticultora de Vinos de Bellite. Annabelle se ha dedicado a resaltar la personalidad singular de sus viñedos y a crear vinos de la más alta calidad.
En Vinos de Bellite, Annabelle cultiva sus viñedos de Garnacha basándose en prácticas biodinámicas y de agricultura regenerativa. Esto lo hace por dos razones fundamentales: la búsqueda de la excelencia en la calidad de las uvas y un profundo respeto por la naturaleza, con el firme propósito de dejarla en un mejor estado del que se encontró.
Además, Annabelle practica una vinificación con mínima intervención, permitiendo que la fruta hable por sí misma.
Su compromiso con las prácticas biodinámicas y la preservación del equilibrio natural del viñedo asegura que cada botella cuenta una historia de autenticidad.
Como lo he dicho, estamos encantados de tener con nosotros a Annabelle.
Annabelle, es un placer estar hoy aquí contigo. It's a great pleasure to be here with you today.
Thank you so much for coming. It's totally my honor to have you.
Could you tell us about your journey with Vinos de Bellite, the reason why you got involved in this wonderful project with your Garnacha wines?
It all started because I was living in the US and my boyfriend is from Spain. So the long distance, it got to a certain point that we were like, okay, maybe we should be in the same country. We did a big trip through all of Spain to look at different regions, different references. And originally my boyfriend is from Olite. So we always ended up coming back to Olite, to these kind of vineyards that are 80 years old and have so much potential still to give and to grow. And that was something that really attracted me also to the region, that there's so much possibility. So in the end, we decided to settle down in Olite for the project and to make wine really focusing on varieties that are local and that have a lot of potential for the future with climate change, that are really adapted to the region. So we found these very beautiful vineyards that have so much potential and that we can work with now.
Could you explain us a little bit about the production process? You have a very particular way of using terracotta vessels.
Yeah, so I think it's very important to keep true to the heritage and of the history of a region. So for example, here there used not to be a lot of oak, and people used to have these clay terracotta kind of amphoras. So I like to really keep true to the terroir and what the vineyard gives me instead of my winemaking taking over. So for example, for this vineyard, there's a lot of white varieties scattered throughout, because previously in the past, when there was a vine missing, they used to replace it with a white variety because it gives faster yield and it's nice to snack on when you're working in the vineyard. So I just harvest everything together, leave it as a whole bunch, I don't destem it, and then use these kind of clay terracotta vessels to make the wine to not have overpowering oak influences.
Wow, that's super interesting. Biodynamic and regenerative agricultural methods have been at the forefront and in the mouths of more and more people. So how would you set these practices apart from traditional winemaking?
So I think what is very important is that we always look for natural solutions instead of looking for what our chemical providers can give us. And what we see is that in nature everything already is in balance. So for every pest there is a contra-pest. So if you just look what is already existing and what previously the nature used to have to defend these kind of attacks, that is one of the most important things for us. So I think what really sets apart biodynamic and regenerative agriculture is that we really respect the nature and see it as an asset instead of our enemy. So it's really our ally to help us. For example, the soil, if you have a very healthy soil, it already gives naturally the nutrients to your plants,
right,
instead of you having to fertilize. So I think that is one of the key differences, that we really see the nature as our ally.
That's wonderful. Is it possible to quantify the quality of the wine due to these biodynamic and regenerative practices?
It's the same as when you have, for example, a tomato you buy from the supermarket or a tomato that has been grown in your own back garden. There's such a difference in flavor.
Yeah.
I think everyone knows like this kind of feeling when you have the tomato that is full of flavor, that is nice and juicy but not watery. And it's the same with grapes. So when they are kind of produced in an industrialized setting, they are less rich in flavor, they have less expression, they're a little bit dull, I would say. And obviously the wine you create from that, it's similar, it's also a little bit dull. Well, when grapes have all of the nature and expression and everything is natural, they have their own self-defense that they have to activate. They get all of this energy in the grapes as well. So when you create a wine from that, there's a huge difference in intensity.
Wow. What were for you the driving factors to adopt these biodynamic and regenerative agriculture practices? What inspired you to adopt this philosophy?
So I think it already started when I started studying in Wageningen. So I did a master in food safety, where we learned everything, the influence of food on your body. So pesticide residues, if you burn your food, all of these kind of methods, what happens to your body and what are the methods that you get cancer or hormone dysfunction. So we had to sometimes just buy in the grocery store food and we would test it on what kind of residues were present. So if you have had such a deep dive in all of the influences on your body, it's something that very easily you're like, okay, if I can use natural methods, it's better. It's what you want for your own health, what you want for your own safety. And also one of the very important things for me is that the people that are applying the pesticides on the vineyard are not always the people that are actually making the decision. And to apply pesticides is also not one of the safest things. So I wanted to work with things that I can touch, that I can be okay with. And if I have to ask someone to do it, that I feel completely fine for their security and their health. So it was for me a key force to make sure that everything I use is natural and doesn't pollute, doesn't cause harm to your own body and to other people's bodies. Okay,
I'm sure that many people confuse what's biodynamic viticulture, what's regenerative viticulture or agriculture. In your own words, what do you think is the main distinction between the two?
So regenerative and biodynamic have a lot in common because they both focus really on the nature and using natural methods instead of using chemical methods. One of the key differences is that in biodynamic you use the biodynamic preparations. So these preparations are established by Rudolf Steiner already in the beginning of the 1900s. And these have different kind of influences. So you have two that are horn preparations that are for life in the soil but also for sunlight captivation. And then you have the compost preparations that create different kind of microbes in the compost that you after put on the vineyards or the whatever agriculture or land you use, and that are really for life in the soil. So the key difference between these two is the biodynamic preparations that are additional on biodynamic farming.
And then if you specifically talk about regenerative practices, like regenerative would be looking more at the soil, right?
You really take a strong focus on the soil, yes, but also on the surroundings, also on, I think the key principles are very similar between regenerative and biodynamic. I think really the key differentiation is the biodynamic preparations that are added on the biodynamic farming. While regenerative, it's really you're regenerating the soil health.
And if we wish to be a source of inspiration for young winemakers like the ones that you're also helping, what would be a starting point? Because it might be complex, but if you break it down in small steps, what would be the first step for new winemakers wanting to enter this field?
I think it's important indeed to start with regenerative agriculture because that is just the basic point. Like we want to have our nature healthy, we want to have our vineyards healthy, our soil healthy. But if you really want to make a strong influence, you add the biodynamic preparations because they really make this microbes in the soil alive.
Right.
So I think it's a really important add-on in the end to apply this as well. And there's a lot of courses you can follow. You can talk with a lot of people. It's a little bit more of knowledge that you need for biodynamics, but in the end, it's quite easily to obtain.
Mm-hmm. And your role in the Biodynamic Federation, we understand that you're also a consultant working at this international organism. So if people contact you, what do they usually ask for? What type of consultancy would they ask you in this case?
So I'm an advisor for the Demeter organization. So it would be people that are looking into converting to Demeter certification or converting to biodynamic. And I would establish a plan for them. What are the easiest steps? How could they convert? What are they looking for? What are going to be the main struggles they will be facing? So it's actually really helping them in the process of getting either biodynamic certified with Demeter or just introducing biodynamic methods in their agricultural practices.
That's great. So what's happening at this specific growth stage in this vineyard?
So at the moment we're at fruit set and we now have small berries. Mm-hmm. The berries are growing. For example, this is it's a white variety, so it's Viura, this mm-hmm. one specifically. Mm-hmm. And we can see that the clusters are quite big and tightly packed. And if we compare that to, for example, our Garnacha, which is here, we can see that the clusters are looser and have a little bit more space and a little bit more room for airflow.
So in this highly competitive wine market, there's so many wine producing countries, there's commercial wines, there's specific niche wines for a specific taste. How would you define your own biodynamic wines? Like what is the market you're trying to address, and what sets you apart from what's going on there in the wine world?
I think it's very unique, especially in this region, what I'm doing with the biodynamic farming. But also I really specialize and focus on varieties that are really true to the region. So they have been here for centuries. So with climate change, they are very easy to adapt. They will not have any issues. And I make wines with lower alcohol. So I really focus on the freshness. Mm-hmm. Instead of having wines that, especially in Spain, there's a kind of standard red wine that everyone makes and everyone does exactly the same kind of method. So right. I try to have my unique kind of way of making the wines in a fresher, lighter style. And especially because these vineyards, they are dry farmed already for 80 years. So they can regulate themselves at lower alcohol levels. Their tannins are super silky. So it's really not an issue. You don't have to wait until it's jammy and it's overripe to harvest the vineyard. So I think that is quite a different kind of mentality that I have compared to other people in my region. But I think in general in Spain, it's kind of a differentiation.
Right. And how would your, let's say, right now that you would be applying also a traditional method, or would you use certain technologies like sensors to establish, first of all, which is the ideal moment to do the harvesting? That's obviously a question of many winemakers, when is the right way, but your particular case would be interesting to hear.
Yes, it's a question as old as time, but for me it's very important to taste. To make sure that the grapes have the fruitiness, that they still have a bit of acidity, that you have the freshness naturally, but without having harsh tannins. So it's very important that the tannins are silky, but at the same time I use all of the technology that I can use. So I check for the pH, I check for the sugar levels, I check for the malic levels, because in the end I did university and I like to have very precision kind of...
so you're like a scientist, you could say.
I am a scientist, so in the end I like to have both. I really like my data, I like my numbers, but the key factor in the end will be the taste, for sure.
Right. So we've reached out to you because we from Dronerotech, Mark Philip and Alvaro, we've felt inspired by what you've done, what we've seen through your social feeds, what we've seen on the internet webpage. So we reached out to you because we thought, hey, why don't we add this additional force of technology that could really enhance and even improve, let's say, your winemaking process. What specific impact did it have, and will it continue to have during this growing season, the collaboration that you established now with us at Dronerotech?
So as I said, for us soil health is very important. So we don't want any soil compaction, and in a year like this where we have rain, sun all the time, you want to go in the vineyard whenever it's necessary. So when it has just rained and you go in the vineyard with a tractor, it compacts the soil a lot. So not a lot of things can grow afterwards. There is less life in the soil. So the drones are, for me, an ideal solution to this because they can just fly over when it's necessary, when it's needed. And since we use only natural products anyway, it works perfect, and it's a perfect combination for us to really make sure that our philosophy is also utilized.
Yeah, I'm sure that it also helps to be able to get an overview, right? We also provide, let's say, these multispectral maps that can provide you with insights in different moments of the growth stage, and also see how specific biostimulant applications through large crop spraying drones have influenced, let's say, the growth of the plant, if there is more vigor, if the stress that has been caused maybe through drought or specific anomalies like botrytis. Understood that maybe you had you dealt also with botrytis in your own vineyard, and have you seen improvements, let's say, thanks to these biostimulants?
So indeed, for me, as I said before, I'm a scientist. I love data. So especially the maps where you see where are the weak points in the vineyards, because I like to focus on the plants that need the most focus instead of just going around. And I think that is a really key difference as well of these drones, that they can really focus on only the plants that need it. So if you have certain kind of biostimulant or fertilization, foliar fertilization, it's perfect to target only the ones that need it instead of just the whole vineyard in once. So that was one of the key attractions for me as well, to be able to have this kind of focus and detail viticulture.
Wonderful. All right, so when talking about cover crops, what particular effect does it have on this type of soil? Because I understand this is a clay soil, right?
So for me, it's very important to adapt your vineyard strategy to the soil type. So here you see indeed we have all of the cover crops that are naturally grown, and we leave it because first the natural cover crops gives an indication about the soil and what kind of cover crops can grow. Says a lot about that particular part of the vineyard. But also because this is a very clay soil, it's important to make sure we don't have a lot of erosion, and also it functions as a sponge. So when we have these really hard pouring of rain, it acts as a sponge. So it makes sure that the water can actually be captured in the soil instead of that everything runs off.
Right,
Because also clay soil, when it dries out, it cracks open. So you can see it here, for example, on the sides. You can see the cracks that are present because those parts don't have as much cover crops. Well, the parts where the cover crops is, there's no cracks in the soil, and the water is actually inside of the soil and it keeps being present there.
When we talk about resilience and sustainability and the current and future situation of how vineyard management could take advantage of new technologies, such as in our case the use of drones, or in other cases the use of other type of technologies, what's your take on this? We're particularly talking about resilience and sustainability.
So for me, I think it's very important to always do precision viticulture, and all of these kind of technologies, they give you a lot of possibilities to, for example, the weather stations, you know exactly what happens in your specific microclimate.
Right.
Because we have different weather stations in each vineyard, and we see a lot of differences between it. And with the drone, we can adapt to that. So if we see that only one vineyard needs to be sprayed, it's not as big as a hassle as when you have only the whole tractor that you have to prepare with all of the equipment. So it gives a lot of flexibility to do this kind of precision viticulture that I believe is very important for the future, to reduce the pesticide usage, to reduce the fertilization usage, and only really use it when it's necessary. So I think it's very important to use all of the technology that you have for your advantage.
And when it comes to irrigation, because an interesting fact that we can see here is that you use irrigation tubes, and with drops that are coming out of that tube. So why would you have irrigation here and for instance not at your previous Garnacha vineyard? Does it have to do with the soil type or the age of the vineyard?
So it's both a little bit. The previous one is 80 years old, it has never been irrigated.
Okay,
so the root system is extremely deep and it reaches everywhere.
Okay.
Well, this one has always been on irrigation.
All right.
So you can slowly phase it out and really have the natural terroir expression, but that needs time. So at the moment we use the irrigation when we have years like last year when there was extreme drought.
Right.
But in a year like this, there's no need for us to use it.
Wonderful. So here we are at Reyna de Copas, wonderful wine shop in the center of Olite, next to the castle. Annabelle, can you tell us something about your exquisite wines?
So here we have the Borra de la Vega, which is the red, which is a blend of the parcels we just visited. And as you can see and try, it's in a different kind of style. So it's a lighter style, but it still has a structure. There's a lot of red fruit. And then we have the Bellite brand, which is our main parceler selection brand. And here we have the white from it. So it's the Garnacha Blanca that we have with a really amazing acidity. It's made with barrel, actually, this one, and a concrete egg.
Wow.
So it really preserves the acidity and the flavors of the fruit.
Wonderful. Cheers.
Cheers.